All right, it is time for our last daily briefing of the week, Friday, August the 21st. These are heard in the 1, 5, and 8 p.m. hours on KLAM and KCDV, also uploaded to youtube.com/Cordova TV. And because Cordova's still in a no news is good news holding pattern, what we'll do today is kind of review some information from the state in the spirit of here's what's going on around Alaska, things that are being done wrong in some other places, and let's avoid those so they don't end up being a problem here. And this is all data from the state's most recent weekly summary. Obviously, we're not going to go over the whole thing, but the highlights section mentions that Alaska continues to see rapid increases in resident new cases. Biggest increase this week was in Anchorage, which had 286 new cases over the week, representing 14 more cases than last week and 52% of this week's increase. Total cases among Alaska residents rose 15%. That's for the whole state, with 554 new ones. The majority of the new cases continue to be among Alaskans aged 20 to 29, with cases among Alaskans in their 20s and 30s still rising. And transmission between Alaskans at social gatherings, within families, at community events, churches, and bars has significantly contributed to the rise in cases. So that's the same as last week. It would seem that most of our cases continue to be in people in their 20s and 30s, and it's when they're getting together. And I don't know, it doesn't say whether masks, I mean, most of the time if people are having a party because they're not worried about catching it, then they likely are not masked. But, I mean, if you can believe the photos that you see online and so forth, but that's the primary vector. So there again, if there's anything that we can learn from the state and avoid having happen here, it's not allowing ourselves to engage in those behaviors. As isolating, I'm sure, as that feels, they've been saying for quite a while now that it's not being at work, it's not going on errands, it's groups of folks. They go on to say most non-resident cases have been identified before the person had significant community interaction, so the airport screening seems to be working. Most new cases in Alaskans are acquired from other Alaskans who have not traveled, so again, it's us spreading it around to each other, not people bringing it in from outside. Hospital capacity is currently adequate, but hospitalizations and deaths are increasing, and so they say Alaskans should, first and foremost, avoid gatherings, then continue to wear face coverings in public, keep 6 feet of distance from non-household members, and practice good hand hygiene to slow the transmission. Looking a little bit more specifically at how the hospitals are doing, again, they remain below capacity with ventilators and ICU beds available, but use continues to slowly rise. 174 Alaskans have required hospitalization for COVID-19. Bed occupancy due to the virus rose in July, following a rise in cases, and has not yet significantly decreased. The inpatient bed capacity in the state, the occupancy of those, and that's COVID and non-COVID inpatient beds, 861 out of about 1,400, so that's 62% full. ICU bed capacity, again, for both COVID and non-COVID cases, that would be 92 of them in use out of 153, so that's about 60%. Ventilators, thankfully, continue to be not much in use. There are 25 in use out of 286, which is about 8%. And then finally, again, their statement on the contact tracing. Ongoing contact tracing has uncovered many cases in Alaskans who have had possible exposures related to group activities. These include churches, residential living facilities, workplaces, bars, and social gatherings. It's interesting they mentioned workplaces this time. They didn't last time. Alaskans should be aware that any gathering, particularly indoors, poses some risk of exposure and should take steps to minimize their risk and the risk they pose to others by keeping their social circles small, wearing face coverings, avoiding large gatherings, and gathering only if it's possible to remain 6 feet apart, ideally outdoors. Contact tracing has become even more resource intensive in recent weeks, with both an increase in new cases and a marked increase in the number of contacts each person has, meaning again that people have been expanding their social circles even as case rates increase. So there again, you can kind of consider that a snapshot of how things are going at the state level, things that they're doing that that others are doing that maybe we aren't, that we would be well advised to continue not doing. Following the same protocols and procedures that have enabled us to keep zeros on our dashboard for quite a number of days here. Mayor Copeland was saying yesterday we hadn't had a new case in 14 days, I think. So that's why we were able to move from yellow to one of the green alert levels. So again, very good work overall on our part. And we'll end the week on that up note with today's daily briefing for August 21st. We'll see you next week again in the 1, 5, and 8 p.m. hours with the uploads to youtube.com/Cordova TV. Everybody be safe, and we'll get back to regular programming on the Clam and the Eagle.